Welcome to Envision Broadcasting, the station designed to encourage, equip, and empower you for growth and success presents The Momentum Shift. A show where we get inspired, we get moving, and we get results. Every Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern with your host, Eric Collier. He's the mayor of motivation and mental quicksand expert, bringing you inspiring interviews and empowering stories that will help to improve lives. If you're ready to start making the impossible possible, then you've joined the right show, because the momentum shift is what you've been looking for.
You gave the Sunday school review. That's exactly what happened. And I'm grateful now for that journey, for that trek back down the mountain, because when you do go to LA, when you do go to Hollywood, you see production at the highest level.
Right.
You see everybody on 1,000, not even on 100. Right. So to then come back, to Memphis specifically, but anywhere, and see people struggling with the basics.
Right.
I was like, ooh, and the natural teacher in me stood up.
Yeah.
And in 2019, when I ended my radio career the second time.
Because I'm somebody who believes that the largest gap an individual will face is the gap that stands between where they are now and what they could become. So the question becomes, are you willing to climb? The greatest trick the mind will ever pull is convincing you that your greatness does not exist. Mama used to say, she said, Eric, what you do in the dark will come out in the light. And she means that you reap what you sow. You get what you put in. And so you got to put the work in. Why? Because you're going to step your game up and untap into that untapped potential of yours and become the greatest person that you could possibly become.
I woke up, I was about to lose everything. And so my wife was about to leave me, and that meant my 3 children were going to be gone, which really hurt me because I would fall short on a promise to my kids where I told them that I was their father. Nobody would ever be in their house taking care of them. Nobody would be responsible for them. They never had to worry about calling anybody daddy but me. Momentum shift. When you get stuck, you got to find a way to get going. And that is all about elevating your performance. You have to realize that high-level results are not products of low-level effort. So you got to step your game up. So you get stuck, you got to get yourself moving. And when you're down in the dumps, you're the only one that's going to be there. So you got to be your own hype man.
What happens is when you don't realize that you have all that you ever need to create the life that you want to live, you're missing out. You're standing at the base of that mountain thinking and hoping somebody's going to save you when all you got to do is take action. Theodore Roosevelt said, he said that the credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena with their face marred in dust with sweat and blood. You've got to get in the arena, claim your moment, take the opportunity to take your shot. Then when you're in that arena, think about this. I got to step my game up.
Eric's message was extremely powerful.
The power of overcoming is not just connected to you. You're rising because the people behind you are counting on you. Thank you. Thank you, Eric.
Hello and welcome to The Momentum Shift, a show designed to get you inspired, get you moving so we can get results. And what we want to do is turn the impossible into possible. I'm Eric Collier, your host, and I've got somebody here with me today who's really special. I got a chance to work with her this weekend over at the National Press Conference. Man, she interviewed me, and just what she provided, the guidance and the input to help me really blow that away was awesome. And I wanted to share her experience, her knowledge with you as well, because she's also a momentum shifter. I won't bring anybody on here if they're not shifting momentum in their life or they're not helping anybody to do the same, because I want them to share their tools and techniques to really help you do the same. So who I have with me today, I have Christie Taylor. She's a creative and business force in the worlds of music, media, film, and entertainment. So please welcome Miss Christie Taylor from Christie Taylor Consulting. Christie, thank you for joining me.
Well, Eric Collier, thank you so much for allowing me to be on your podcast. I'm super excited to be in the other seat this time. So I'm in the hot seat.
That's right. You remember your instructions, right?
I'll do my best to do what I tell y'all to do. Thank you.
So I'm glad to have you join me. I like to bring people on the show, and what I really want to do is inspire people to get moving, because sometimes Well, you know what I mentioned during my speech, we have this mountain that we've got to climb, but we've got to go from looking at the mountain, seeing the difficulty, to actually getting on that mountain, taking action so that we can introduce ourselves to the best version of us. So talk to me about how you've gotten on your mountain, that momentum shift, that aha moment, and what it means to your life.
Well, Eric, I will say that when it comes to my momentum, it's really since childhood. I always was a very avid reader. I loved language. Even though I was a quiet child, I had something to say. It took time, though, I must confess, for me to blossom into the master communicator that I am today. But that momentum came through, number one, my love of language, and really my love of God, and giving space within my heart, even as a young girl, giving space for me to believe the impossible for myself and to take the action steps to do that. So it's been a journey, a ever evolving journey of climbing the mountain, because I got to tell you something, Eric. I tend to climb multiple mountains. I actually have a friend who has said, throughout my life, that as soon as it seems like you get on one summit of a mountain, then you're like, okay, on to the next. So it's a constant journey of finding new things to do. So I think if my life is a testament to momentum, it is really about even taking setbacks, uncertainties, and learning how to use that as fuel to go to the next level. So I know we'll get into some tips and techniques, so I'll let you guide me in this conversation.
I love what you just said. When you're at the top of one mountain, you're at the bottom of another one that you gotta climb. Otherwise,
Yes.
Stagnant, right?
Yes, and one thing I don't like is stagnation. I am by nature, even though growing up, I was one of those quiet, seen but not heard little girls. But I found that I did have something to say, and that it has forced me to learn how to become seen and heard, and end up having a whole career in radio. I tell you, there are people who knew me as a little girl who are still scratching their heads like, when did Christie start talking?
Hey, it happens, right?
It really does.
My younger brother. He's 2 years younger than I am. And it's funny because he was always a quiet one. Now you get him on the road and you're just sitting there listening.
I have to confess, I do have some friends who tell me that now maybe you should go back to being quiet and just listen. So it's, but it's all those years of not feeling seen and heard. And really, even that right there, Eric, is a testimony to how we can use the things that make us feel insignificant and small,
right,
and how we can allow it to become fuel for the positive, as opposed to keeping us balanced or locked into certain things. Now, let me say, the thorn in the flesh, using that scripture, like thorn in the flesh may always be there, but allowing ourselves every single time to use those things that can sometimes be our handicap to actually launch us forward. So even the thorn in the flesh that you may have from a child or trauma or something that happened in your adult life, use it. I literally just had a conversation with someone that was talking about this same thing, on how the things that tend to keep us locked in, our limitations, are really the signals on the things to work on. Ooh. And I was like, that's powerful. Like, if you feel that there's a limitation in your life, that's really a signal that, oh, that's what I need to work on.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Wow. And I think you pointed out something. I think this was where I think you were pointing it out for this reason, but you said you were quiet.
Yes.
A lot of things you take in a lot of knowledge when you're quiet, right?
Yes.
There's a reason for moving. Those who listen, right? What is it saying? Those that say don't know, those that know don't say. And when you're in a room and you're with people that you've never been around, and as my dad says, if you just listen, you can find out a lot about people, right?
And my adult life, particularly in my college years, and my journey has been from, a lover of language, of books, and then eventually finding my voice through singing. So music was my first love, and Broadway, I thought was going to be my greatest ambition. But during my college years, I actually say that radio found me, radio, TV, and films, communications. Yes. And, to your point about being quiet and having for decades observing and absorbing other people's thoughts and feelings and emotions, when I did start exploring my own voice, I will say that, I found out that there was a lot of weight to it. And through my life, I have oftentimes been the person that if someone wants to talk about something, they'll come to me. Now, I have to balance that because, everything, there's an extreme to everything.
Yes.
So I will say that I did develop a lot of wisdom and insight. And now I just have to learn how to balance things out.
Got you. Yeah, I like that. And so when you look at balance, so let me ask you this. When you look at balance, does that mean everything's even and it's even keel? Because we got to talk about that word.
I will not lie to you on this show. My God. Didn't I say when I get to one mountain summit, I'm always looking at the next one. So it's constantly, I don't know if it's ever an equal balance for me, but if I can get to maybe even a 70-30 or that seesaw kind of thing, it may not always be equal, but I do try not to just live on a tilt,
Got you. Yes.
The goal is not to just live on a tilt either way.
Right.
But the balancing act, I remember, Eric, I think I was in my 30s. I'm one of those proud golden girls, actually golden goddesses now, whatever the words they want to use.
Okay.
But in my 30s, I remember going to balancing that I did know that there was a chapter of my life where I was on a constant juggling act.
Okay.
And I will tell you, as a woman of color, as someone who, we have long history of multitasking and doing a lot of things and being a lot of things for a lot of people. But there's one thing to have a balance within yourself. Yeah. But I would admonish anybody who's listening to make sure that you're not juggling too much.
Okay.
Once I learned how to only maybe juggle 2 things at a time, not 10.
Right.
I was able to come to a greater sense of balance within myself by not juggling so many things outside of myself. So I will say that, aging, I've been learning. It's a journey though. Let me tell you, I ain't gonna never lie and say I got it right.
I got it. So how did you go from interviewing the media, singing to writing now? So now you're writing screenwriting. How did you get in?
Well, Eric, honestly, most people would probably say it was the reverse. I actually started, as that quiet child with a lot to say, and the way I found my initial voice was writing songs. I used to write poetry and songs. Okay. And then I used to kind of play around with short stories. And, when you're in elementary and grade school or middle school, the teachers would give you these creative writing assignments. And, so I was able to express myself that way. And then out of, coming to the radio and rewriting the songs and coming up with my own, love poems and things. By the time I hit high school, I took band first, clarinet.
Okay. All right.
And then
I was brass.
Okay, fellow band member. But it was in high school that I actually mustered up the courage to audition for choir. Okay. And once I made choir, I sang in church. So that was already, first of all, in certain churches, even if you cannot sing, you're in the choir. You're going to be in the choir. You're going to be in the usher board. They're going to find something for you to do. So even as a young girl, I was in the choir. But it was in high school that I will say, from the writing and poetry into, singing in choir, auditioning for, honors choir, and then deciding to have a music major in college, that I was like, I'm going to be a singer, because that was like the way I was going to find my voice. But it was from the singing that I found radio, or radio found me. So you see how the progression was? It's like I started off writing in my journals, in my diary, and learning how to write those songs and poems, and then singing those songs. And I think there's a binder somewhere in one of my storage where there's like 300 songs, probably incomplete songs and some poems. But I probably would laugh at seeing some of them. But it was actually the other way. But I will say, Eric, that during my radio careers, fast forwarding it, years later, the writer in me, she showed back up. Because I had been neglecting her. I was no longer doing poetry sets. I was no longer singing. I'm all the way in my radio career, my 30s into my 40s. And somewhere she was like, oh, you're neglecting me. And a friend of mine at the time, he was a concert promoter. And he actually approached me, because the one thing I would always do was watch movies. That was my in the height of my radio career, the way I decompress would be to take in 2 or 3 matinees on a weekend. That was my way of going into that dark room, that the introverted part of myself needed that. So I would spend the weekends in the dark rooms of the theater. And I would talk about it. I was I was an informal critic.
Right. And, three tomatoes.
Yeah. So I ended up helping him write converting a stage play into a screenplay, because I had taken writing and I had taken all these courses. But once I got into radio, I was like really focused, like I'm building my career, that kind of thing.
So what you just talked about were several shifts.
Yes.
So I think one of the things I had to sit down and check this. I had to do this exercise. I wanted to see what it was about change that was difficult. And so sometimes you look at the word and you see the definition, but I sat down and I just said listen to the word and tell me what you feel. Change. How do you feel when you hear that word?
Actually, in my soul, I feel a little bubbly.
Yeah, that's what I noticed about me. And so because we feel like that sometimes, we don't flow fluidly, right, into change. So with all those you just mentioned, were you eager to go, or were you kind of like, no, I'm not doing that. That's not me.
Ooh, Eric. Oh my God. Can I confess? Okay, this is a therapy session at this point.
Yeah, sit down on my couch. The momentum
yes,
couch.
Thank you very much. Let me do a session. And I'm actually more of a quiet daredevil.
Okay.
I am the one that right when people think they know what I'm doing,
yes,
I come out of nowhere with a whole new twist.
Okay. All right.
So there's something inside of me, on the inside of my soul. She'll be like, all right, time's up. Next mountain. Time's up. Let's skydive. Time's up. Let's go race car riding. Time's up. Let's move to a whole nother city. Time's up. Let's change career. It's like, yeah. So, but I will say, going to the point of momentum shift, none of those things are outside of the norm of who I am, because the truth is that little girl who was thinking deeply, she was imagining all these things. So it's really like, this is really great. Thank you for this moment. I'm really keeping promises to her.
Okay.
Things that she saw and imagined in the quietness of herself.
Right.
Is what I, as the adult version, I'm having to keep promises. However, it has been rocky, because sometimes right when you're in a nice momentum, you've got a nice groove and a nice flow, and then it'd be like, okay, time to change. Right. Time to level up. Time to move to the next dimension, the next phase. Right. And it'd be like, no resting on your laurels for long. Gotcha. Now, by the time though, Eric, I hit my late 40s, early 50s, I wanted to rest. Okay. I started getting stuck. Yeah. Yeah. The gears started sticking.
Yeah. Yeah, I get you. I understand. Yes. Yes.
The gears started sticking.
It starts sticking there, and then it starts, then you're just like, look, I need to get started again, huh?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's important to know. Because I'm one of those African Americans, who advocate mental health awareness and the importance of therapy, professional therapy. Faith-based therapy is one thing, but I do also believe in getting, the professional help and support you need. Right. And actually, it was when I came back after co-writing a movie, going back to school, starting to work on a graduate degree, and having to find myself back in Memphis on radio, that I was in a very deep crisis within myself, because I was like, I did all these things just to end up back in radio. It didn't make sense. Right. And I started seeking out therapy. Like, I needed to figure out what had I done, all the things, right? And to go to the mountain and come back down and go back up and come back down and go another. So I was like, why did I land back in this space and in this city and all the things? Well, to be close to my mom was the most obvious reason, right? But still,
Yeah.
But I will say, if you are a risk taker, if you're an adventurous person, or if you've always lived your life that way, you've been the one who was, will do the evil Knievel and, all that. Okay, I'm really dating myself on that.
I like it. I can relate. This cool.
If by chance you are at a place where you're now beginning to feel stuck,
Yes.
go get help. Talk it through. There may be reasons why you're pausing that are bigger than you.
Right.
And I would say, don't allow those things. I will say God did send some people across my path and into my life during that time,
Right.
to basically help me, almost like a boulder. There was some trepidation. There were some, did I do life right? There were a lot of those questions. And then, of course, the truth is I'm still living. So
that's key.
You hear that? Like, have I done life right? Did I do the first 30, 40 years right?
Right.
And the truth is that whatever age you're in now, you still have life. So today, do life right.
There we go. And what is right?
Yeah, and what is right? And what is right?
Yeah.
Who's really checking off the boxes? And that's why it's so important. And Eric, you know this. To be the smartest person in the room is cool.
Yeah.
But once you become an expert in a space, and you're a subject matter expert, yet you still want to invest in putting yourself in the rooms with other people who know more than you or know something different than you.
Yes. Oh, I learned a lot. I learned a lot in that room this weekend.
Speak So Shine definitely was something that even leveled me up. I came in to support you all, but you all were also teaching me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. So when you look at you coming back to radio and you said it, I like the way you said it, because sometimes we go into the whining, woe was me mode, right? Why me, Lord? Why? But you said you had to figure out what the opportunity was here. Why was I back here? What was in it there? What did you find was in there? Did you find out a little bit more about yourself? Was there another opportunity that presented itself and allowed you to go elevate yourself, even though you, like I said, you came down the mountain you felt like you came down the mountain to come back?
I would say what I found when I came back to radio, and that was in 2015. I had left radio in 2009 and gone back to school, was, trying to move in that TV film writing space. And in 2014, came back to Memphis, and in 2015, found myself back in radio. And during those 4 years, number one, I had an opportunity, because my entire radio career had been gospel and inspirational, that I now had an opportunity to do urban AC. So I stretched myself by, being in a different format. And I took that challenge and really tried to learn how to, still do me as a, well-noted personality, and try to quote unquote win in this space. But the bigger thing that has led to what I'm doing now is, when I started my career in earnest in 1999, it was a different industry, not just radio, but the entertainment industry. Everybody had managers and agents that were well prepared when they came to media interviews. Now, 20 something years later, by the time I'm ending my career in 2019, I'm seeing all what we call new money or new fame. And people showing up with all the icing of the cake, but they were the weakest link in the room. Because even though they were doing well in their profession, in their business, in their industry, they were not being developed and trained for media interviews. And I remember a young lady, which was even more startling. She had a whole communications degree. She was the communications point person for a large nonprofit organization, well-funded. And she came in and was, when I tell you, it was like deer in headlights. And I'm like, okay, this is not, because when I tell you everything she sent in, the website is fabulous. The social media was on point, the press releases, all the things, the marketing tool was on point. But when she came into the radio studio, she first of all brought her boss.
She brought her boss.
And her boss, her supervisor, came with her. And so and she's a little younger Black young lady, went to a very well-known school, and yet she's bringing in this older white lady to accompany her. Now, I don't know if it's because that was the way they wanted it, because she was, but by midway the interview, and it was a long public affairs interview, I had to stop them. Okay. And I had to tell the young lady, look at me. She's not in the interview. And I was going to ask her supervisor to leave. Right. Because I didn't need her to divert. But it was in that instance, Eric, that I was like, wow, people are no longer being trained for media. They're not being prepared. They get the money, they have the positions, they have the opportunities, they may have the stylist, all the things that make you look fabulous online, and even, in your trade show exhibit, you find, and you got a stylist, you suited and booted, you're looking good, you walk into the radio station or the TV studio, and then you're the weakest link. You can't communicate effectively and confidently your message. So that really was the biggest takeaway of me going back to radio, because it gave me a soft spot for people who were new to media, beyond social media. The broadcast media.
All right. So God took you out to go learn some things, and he brought you back so that you could teach your expertise. And boom.
Come on now. So, you better preach now. Come on. That was a Sunday school review. Deacon Collier, come give us the Sunday school review. You gave the Sunday school review. That's exactly what happened. And I'm grateful now for that journey, for that trek back down the mountain, because when you do go to LA, when you do go to Hollywood, you see production at the highest level. Right. You see everybody on 1,000, not even on 100. So to then come back, to Memphis specifically, but anywhere, and see people struggling with the basics. Right. I was like, ooh, and the natural teacher in me stood up. Yeah. And in 2019, when I ended my radio career the second time,
it just kept calling you back.
Radio loves me. And there's more to that story, because in 2019, I did start Christie Taylor Consulting, which is a full service marketing, PR, and communications agency. I lean heavy on the communication part. I lean heavy on the strategy part, because even if you're going to have somebody hire someone to do marketing, you need to know your strategy. Don't just hire a bunch of people and they do it for you. You guide the ship. Even if you hire a publicist, know your PR strategy. I like to sit down with people and help them determine that part.
Yeah. I had a great time with that. That was an eye opener for me, because I hadn't even thought about it. In fact, I ran that, what are your identifiers by? I mentor and coach high school students. And so I ran there, what are your identifiers by my group today? And they approached it the same way I did. Somebody who's happy, who's smiling, who's doing it. They had no clue either. So we learned some things. I love it. So I'm using that.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Take that around the world, because, there is, as you know, it being a man in leadership, that oftentimes once we learn how to put on the look and the air, that's the thing we project to the world. But oftentimes people see past all of that to the core, to the just down to the naked you. And we need to factor those things back in as we engage people.
So what would you say would be, if I'm going to shift momentum, what would be the thing that I need to do first before getting started with that? Or what would you say the thing that I would need to do to really kick that off?
I'm going to tell you what I'm doing right now, because I'm in the midst of another shift. Okay. I am shifting up into this media training, because I want to literally become like the evangelist of media training. Okay. So it is going to force me to step outside of my persona and really, step fully into another industry, because little did I know, Eric, that coaching and consulting is an industry and speaking is an industry. I'm just like, it's an extension of radio. No, it's not. Even though I've been in the media, entertainment, film, and music world, speaking and coaching, corporate training, all of those things are industries. They have their own rules and regulations, their do's and their don'ts. So I am starting, and this is literally how I've started. I've always started with journaling. Now, I now have a personal journal and I have a business journal. And these are those sacred spaces where I can put all the thoughts down, not in a coherent vision board type way, but literally all the fears, do you think this will work? I mean, just the inner dialogue. And I like to do that. And I need to do that right through here because I need to come clean. I need to be honest about some things, about how I'm feeling.
That
what
honest
I know,
discussion, huh? That honest discussion, right?
Yeah, and with and the honest discussion with myself and on the pages.
Yeah.
Because oftentimes we'll go into, particularly when we get to a certain level and we know what should come next, we'll hire that coach.
Yeah.
Well, it's like back in the day in radio, or I'll even say in music. One of the things a studio engineer would hate is if an artist or a singer came to the studio and wrote the song.
Wrote the song?
Yeah, never write the song in the studio. I mean, I know there are people who brag about that,
right.
But true trained musicians, singers, and artists, they perfect the song in their garage, in
right.
their rehearsal halls, wherever, and they come to the studio to capture and record it.
Gotcha.
So just like with, don't hire the coach and the team until you, the leader of the ship,
right.
the captain of the ship, the leader of this new idea is clear within yourself where you're going. Because you'll just waste a lot of people's time and money.
Right. Yeah. You're writing it, and you got however much time for however much money, and you're writing when you should be singing and working on this song. I love it. So you talk a lot. You talk about coaching and you talk about therapy. I commend you, because most people, I can tell you, as somebody who in the past, you need coaching, you need therapy. I don't need no coach. I don't need no therapy. I'll figure it out. But I've learned that you need that because you got to get out of your own head.
Yeah.
And that's key. So you talk, I got a chance to watch one of your videos of you speaking, and you talk about 5 keys. I forget so can you mind sharing one of them?
I don't mind sharing it because this is good. Like I told you, I'm in the hot seat today. You're turning the heat up over here.
Well, that's good coming from a news media person. I love it. I love it. That means I'm doing pretty good. I like it. Thank you.
You're doing very well. Thank you, Eric. Actually, in my 20s, while living in Detroit, because going back to up the mountains, down the mountains, across the seas and all, during my 20s, I ended up living in Detroit because I was deep in the music game, gospel specifically. But it was also in Detroit that I realized I did not like being in the studio. I did not like stage. I did not like the life of a musician and singer. But if you're 20-something years old without a true skill, you dropped out of college, what are you going to do? So it was in my 20s that, and I have to give all credit to God, that God started teaching me principles that guided my life, where I ended up 6 years later starting my real career in my 30s.
Okay.
And it was about 5 years into my career that God started telling me to share what he had taught me. And Eric, I don't know about your relationship with God. I was like, God, what? What did, my prayer life may be different than your prayer life. It's like a conversation. Like, God, what did you teach me? I was just in Detroit bumping my head.
Right.
I was confused. I didn't know what I was doing. What, you were teaching me something? What were you teaching me? And probably over the course of a year, going back to journaling, I was writing out things he was showing me he had taught me. Okay. And when they crystallized, there were 5 principles. And the name of the seminar and lecture, which thanks to people like y'all have inspired me to get back out here and start speaking.
Awesome.
Living Life seminars. For several years during my radio career, I would make the rounds in Memphis as an extension of my radio career and would speak and share these 5 principles, which I would love to share with your audience today.
All right. All right. All right. Hey, I want to let the audience know, get a pen, get a piece of paper, write them down, use them, and let her know how it worked out for you.
Okay, thank you very much. So Living Life, and LIFE is an acronym for Life in Full Expression. Okay. So the whole premise of Living Life for me in my 20s is that I had come to such a dark place because I was so off my purpose and path. I'm hanging out with people who were doing good in their life, but that wasn't my life. So for me, I was depressed. I was suicidal. I was, that was the entry into going into therapy. And the first thing that God taught me, in order to live life in full expression, life unhinged, life without limitations, is you have to know the first principle, which is, what is my name?
What is my name? Okay.
What is my name? If you hold your hand out, the first thing, if you ball your hand out, I know for those who are watching, and I do this in my seminar, I say, extend your hand and ball it up and say, my life is in my hand.
My life is in my hand.
And your hand is clutched. And each time I give you a principle, you're going to extend a finger. And at the end of these 5 principles, your hand will be fully open. And it's in the openness of your hand that life can flow.
Okay.
So the very first principle, my life is in my hand, with the hand balled up.
My life
and
is
then
in my
the
hand.
first principle, you can extend that pinky finger. That's always a good start.
Okay.
What is my name? And that principle
What is
really
my
just
name?
talks about the importance of knowing your name. And I go into the whole science of what your name is, literally give them in the seminars, particularly. I do lectures of it too, which is abbreviated, but in the seminars, which can be 3 hours long,
Right.
they go through practicums, they got booklets, and you write down your actual birth name. Then you write the story of how you got that name. And everybody's story is different, but the truth is, no matter how you came to your name, somebody else gave it to you.
Right. Yes.
Yet through life, because somebody has already ascribed something to you, you oftentimes live under the burden of the name given.
Right.
And what point in your life do you ever become self-defined? Wherever do you have a moment where you can name yourself?
Right.
And names have power. I mean, those who get into all those things, alphabets, numbers and stuff, understand that every alphabet, every number has an energy. So that gets deep, deep, deep. But I give people the freedom to become self-defined and name themselves. And I actually had one lady, her name was Sophia. I love her, rest in heaven well, but she used to call herself Misdetermined because she had gone through an amazing life journey, from addiction to sobriety to faith-based and raising some beautiful children. And she was like, I am misdetermined, because she was determined to live life unhinged without limitation. So that's the first principle. What is my name? And then the second principle, no, my life is in my hand, is the second principle is breathing to live. Because once you become self-defined, then you have to understand, I am a particular person with a particular destiny that I can determine, I can define. And the breath that God has in your body, like literally from Genesis, the Bible talks about, in other holy scripts, that, man was an inanimate object in the garden. And it took God breathing into man for him to become a living soul, which means an awakened being. And it's literally the covenant between us and God is your literal breath. So every single time you take a breath, that is God in you. Come on now.
I love it.
And as long as you have breath in your body, that means God has purpose for you, which goes into why you can always recreate and change. So the breath of God, the literal breathing, is the covenant that God has something else for you to do. And with that breath leads us to the third principle. My life is in my hand. 3 principles up. The third principle is, well, then what does God want me to do? So I know what my name is. I know that I am breathing to live, and that every single time I take a breath, that is God's literal spirit that he started humanity with, that is exchanging with me. So that means God got purpose for me. Well, what is that purpose? And that is the exercise, and I go deep into this, where one of the things, particularly in African-American cultures, where everybody got a plan for your life.
Yes. Yes.
Baby, I mean, Big Mama got a plan, everybody's cool. Everybody got something they want you to do. Then you get married, your wife got plans. So I give people for a moment the opportunity to say, take everybody's plan off your life. What is it that you want to do? Because that came through my own soul searching, me discovering my real purpose in life, because I was praying based on, what I had been indoctrinated and taught. God got a plan for your life. And then God, and people say, you're a teacher, you're an evangelist, you're a preacher, all the things. You should be a preacher's wife. You should be a pastor's wife. I grew up in church, went to a Christian university. I mean, I was doing all the things to shape along that path. And then yet it was counter to what I was destined to be, what I was created and born to be. So I give people with, what does God want me to do? I give you an opportunity with the breath that God has given you. That's the covenant that you have with God. That is not dependent on nobody else, because nobody can give you breath. Nobody can take, what I'm saying? So what does God want me to do with this breath that he's given me?
Yeah, I like that.
Write down, I used to say, write down 10 things, 20 things. But that was what my mom used to attend these with me, and I would have them almost write 100. She said, oh, you're just getting us too many. Like, but it's hard for some people because some of them will be stuck within a 15-minute span to even write down 2 things they like to do. Because the thing that you are really born to do are things that you innately like to do, that you like to do. Not what somebody say you like to do, but you specifically apart from anybody else on the planet. And that could be cooking.
Right.
It could be gardening. It could be making, painting. It could be sculpturing. It could be teaching children. It could be playing. It could be becoming a clown. But it has to be something that you like to do that is not dependent on anyone else. Write down those 10 to 20 things, and then take the top 5 and make a declaration that says, God wants me to cook.
Okay.
And a lot of times people giggle and laugh.
Right.
Because, especially a lot of the ladies, I like shopping. And I said, well, then that's your declaration. God wants you to shop. And
There
like,
you go.
I said, God,
Create a business.
come on, God wants me to create it. God wants me to, whatever it is, God wants you to do it, because once you get a sanction from God, you hear me?
Yes.
Then we feel like we have an empowerment to do it, like we have the okay. But then, even in your private time, I said, because some of y'all got journals right now, you and God been in the midnight hour writing these journals out, got full-fledged plans, but they still in that journal form. Then why are you doing it? It's because we need peer-to-peer affirmation.
Okay.
So after you make your declaration, I said, pick one of those things.
Yeah.
And you can say, God wants me to speak to men about life and love.
Yeah.
So then we would say, after you say that declaration, say it with me, Eric, do a declaration. Right. God wants you to what?
God wants me to speak and help people go from being stuck to living their life full. Was it life and full? And I forgot the E.
Expression.
Full expression. There we go.
Okay. So then the class would say, whether it was 2 people in the class or 100 people, and then we would all say, and we agree with God.
Yes.
Oh my God. The room would just change energy, because once you have God's approval and peer support, then it infuses a new level of activity and activation within you, which leads us to the 4th principle. Extend your hand. What does my life is in my hand? I know what my name is. I'm breathing to live, and I know what God wants me to do. The 4th principle is, and the 4th principle is va. And yes, I have to sing it. I have to sing it. Va. And I force everybody to sing it, even if they can't sing. Yes. And it's an acronym that stands for Visualize, Affirm, Act. VAA.
Visualize, affirm, and act. All right.
So that means in sister girl term, you got to see that thing, you got to speak that thing, and you got to step to that thing.
I like that. See that thing, speak that thing, and step to that thing. I like it.
And of course, anybody that understands manifestation, we all have to envision within ourselves us doing a thing.
Right.
Every thought, and that's one of the things too. Everything we see in the natural eye, with the natural eye, even human behavior, was first a thought.
Yes. Okay.
Every single thing. There's nothing, even world systems, somebody first thought it.
Yeah. Right,
An ink pen, somebody had to envision it.
Somewhere it came from, right?
It has to come from the immaterial portion of the mind. And once you begin to see that thing, then you're going to be like, oh, I see a car, or I see something on wheels. And then that becomes the fruition, the guiding light to building a car out of thin air.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's something that had never been done before.
Right.
Inventions are born out of the infinite mind of God that he downloads to us. But once we begin to see that thing and agree with that thing and speak it in alignment, and then we take the necessary steps, the actions to make it so.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, got to take action. It don't happen. You can suck up all the knowledge. Right.
And that's the 5th principle. So there you go. Look at it. Extend your hand. My life is in my hand. Yeah. I know what my name is. I am breathing to live. I know what God wants me to do. And I visualize, I affirm, I act. I see that thing. I speak that thing, and I'm stepping toward that thing. And to step toward this thing, Eric, the 5th principle is live the dream.
Live the dream. Yes.
Live the dream. And to live the dream, you have to create a workable plan. Now, important. I know we were to the wrap up. A workable plan is different because A lot of us, I'm a Capricorn, don't hate me on astrology, but I'm just saying that they say we tend to be very goal oriented. Like everything has to have a goal.
Right.
However, there can be, for those of us who are very goal driven and time management driven, all the things that corporate America instilled in us.
Yes.
When it comes to life, though, life in full expression, and that's the full expression.
Full expression.
There you go. See, it has to be dramatic. You're in my class already. Y'all see that?
I'll get some free training.
You have to let it breathe, though. You have to create what I call workable plans.
Okay.
Because I always tell people, you walked into this seminar, or you're listening to this podcast, and you already had a heap of stuff on your plate. You're already trying to figure out how you're going to eat what you got on your plate. You know, old folk used to say, you don't put too much on your, eat it all. But you're like, how I'm going to.
Don't you throw nothing away.
But when it comes to our adulting, and we keep a lot on our plates, Eric.
Yes.
Oftentimes when new opportunities come, we can't even take advantage of them.
Oh, yeah. Excuse me, sir.
Yeah, we can't even take advantage of opportunities that come to us because our plate is full.
Mm-hmm.
And that can throw us off by weeks, months, even years, because we have added what Big Mama wanted, what cousin wanted, what the church wanted, what the pastor wanted, what the boss wanted, what, our own business demands are, all the things we out of just living life, living everyday life, but not fully, but just living. We got a lot on the plate. But I say create a workable plan. So here you are. You came to my seminar. You heard my lecture. You're listening to this podcast, and Christie has inspired you. You're doing the work. You have identified yourself. You're now breathing to live. You're taking those deep breaths, knowing that God is in you. And then also I know this is so dramatic.
Oh, no, it's cool. I love it.
You now know what God wants you to do. And even though it was something that was deep inside you that you had in journals from 20 years ago, you're resurrecting it. And now you're visualizing, you're speaking that thing, you're stepping, you're building workable plan. Christie, what is that? Right. The next 30, 60, 90 days, what can you do to get from where you are to where you want to be? Well, I used to have this is a true story, Eric.
Okay.
I used to say, it's just like the man who's married with 3 kids and he's a janitor and he always wanted to be an astronaut.
Right.
I said, he was a plumber and he always wanted to be an astronaut. I said, he came to my seminar and he said, what can I do in 30 days to go to space? I said, the first 30 days is you've been watching sports all the time when you come home, getting in the lazy, what they call them back in the
lazy
day?
Boy.
The lazy boy. You lean back with the remote control. You finna turn on ESPN.
Right.
First thing you got to do is change the channel.
Oh, yeah.
You can't watch sports no more. All your TV watching now has to be about space and astronauts and all the things. Discovery Channel is now your new channel. Matter of fact, you done took off ESPN. You done took off all the sports channel off your
channel in town.
And first thing you need to do is change the channel. What information are you consuming when you log online? What are you now researching? What's your entertainment? It needs to be in alignment with your bigger dreams and goals. So sometimes the first thing you can do in 30, 60, 90 days is simply change the channel. Right. Next thing you can do is, instead of hanging out with the boys, because I know your wife give you at least one day a month, one day to go hang out with the fellas. Y'all go to the sports bar. You know what I'm saying? You down in the South, the Cowboys, Titans, all that kind of stuff. Yeah. One day a month, now you're changing the channel. You're not watching ESPN, but going to hang out with your boys at the sports bar. No. You can't go that one day a week from the family. You got to go to the library.
Right. Yeah.
Or to the planetarium.
Yeah.
You got to go where the space cadets hang out.
Right. Yeah. You got to fuel the dream.
And now you're gonna get a new clique of friends who all talk about space travel.
Yeah.
You can't go hang out with the sports lovers no more. The first thing, change the channel. Next thing is change your locations. Then the third thing you're going to be really doing is now the family got to get in on it. Remember that once a year, typical family got 5 days family vacation, spring or fall break. They like to go to Liberty Land and all these Disney World. We got to go to Huntsville, Alabama.
Yeah. Epcot Center.
What you're saying, you got to go where NASA is located.
Mm-hmm.
That's now the family vacation, because now you got to have the whole family buy into your vision and dream.
Right.
These are the types of things you have to do in increments because you got to also stop committing to other things that are no longer in alignment. Once you said yes to all the things before you came to the seminar,
Yes.
and it's holiday season, you don't put your money out, you don't promise stuff. January 1st, next 90 days, you can't promise, you can't no now. If it ain't space related, if it ain't going about me being an astronaut, no.
Right. And you got to stay in that process because it's a lifetime process, right? You're under construction for life. Yeah.
And that is how you change your life.
I love it, man. I felt like I love it. I love it. I love it. Let me say this to everybody out there. If you're willing to book Christie Taylor for your event, I'm going to tell you, that's a great opportunity. You just heard a sample right there. Go to her website, ChristieTaylorConsulting.com, and book her. Because I tell you, what she just passed right there, I don't know how you can miss this out right now. Don't miss this opportunity. I love that. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. And that's just off the 5 principle. That's not even on the media stuff. So wow. I appreciate you. I appreciate you so much.
That's awesome, man. So wow. Okay.
So that lets you know momentum shift. I'm in a momentum shift to move from where I've been to where I want to be, which is a top-notch, sought-after speaker and trainer that travels the world for leisure and pleasure. Okay. That's one of my declarations. I am I see myself on jets and yachts, honey, in the most spacious conference rooms around the world. I was just at the National Press Club last week. Come on now. Come on.
That's
so
right.
I am now declaring those things and I'm making the changes. I'm having to change my channel, change my circle, change my direction. I'm on the look. Yeah. A week later, I'm on a podcast with Eric Collier.
The mayor of motivation, the momentum shift host. Let's go.
Come on, you hear me? I am literally, so that's part of the change that I've been doing in declaration. And I said yes to the invitation. That was an action I had to take.
I love it. And I'm so glad you did. So you're talking about changing the channel. You're talking about climbing the mountain, right? Once you get to the top of one, you had another one to climb. You're at a location you share with me. I want you to share with the audience. You're at a location now that is part of another climb you're about to make. Talk to me about it, please.
All right. So for those who have an opportunity to check out some of the beautiful visuals he's going to share across various platforms, I'm literally in one of my clients' latest location. It's downtown Memphis in the downtown core, the business district. I assisted her. She's my client and friend, Tina Tilton. Shout out to her. The podcast center was in the suburbs. It still is. But through some coaching and consulting, she followed my strategies. And now we are in a beautiful downtown location. Art behind us from local artists. Matter of fact, you were asking about that 901, honey. For those that know, the 901 is Memphis. It's the 901. And I'm really excited to be able to say that I'm able to do this from her new downtown location. Yeah. And these are the types of strategies that I like to, how do I need to market you? What is your business strategy? How do you increase your visibility? How can we, as she said, matter of fact, I say things like increase your visibility and generate more revenue. Where my girl, Tina Tilton, who owns the podcast center, said, tell people Christie will get you seen and get you money. So
simple as that. I love it.
So I'm really excited about it. Beautiful location. If you're ever in the Memphis area, it's the prime location for audio and video production. You can bring your own crew. We also have support staff for that as well. But I also teach classes, teaching one month, every Saturday, one Saturday of every month. I teach people how to also, FYI, how to create podcasts, radio shows, TV shows. And I do partner with her in co-managing 2 radio stations here in Memphis. One is L.I.F.E 96.3 FM, which is a throwback hip hop station. And also as well, Right On Radio. We launched that 4th of July of this year. It's a classic R&B and soul station. So when I tell you radio keeps finding me.
Yes.
And she just had me launch a new public affairs show, so I'm back on the bike as well. So and shout out to all those who are going to be checking us out, ChristieTaylorConsulting.com. Follow me on all social. Would love for you to be a part of my community, and I look forward to speaking with you.
Oh yeah, go check her out. Let her know you heard her on the Momentum Shift podcast and radio show. So you probably already covered it. I was gonna say what's next for you. You hit all that.
Well, what's next for me is Eric just told y'all to reach out to me at ChristieTaylorConsulting.com. Click on Book Christie. And what's next is my next speaking gig. Come on now.
Watch out. I love it. I love it.
Worldwide.
Wow.
Worldwide.
Worldwide. So, and you already told them how you can link up with them. You're covering everything. I mean, you just
so did I do
you
good,
work with a media expert. Yes.
Okay, that was one of the things, ladies and gentlemen. I'm gonna slide into that real quick. When he was in my virtual coaching class, we had a one-on-one session. It's how to master the 2-minute media interview. And some of the things, throwing this out, is your personal narrative. And I told you about my childhood, my professional messaging. I talked about my career, but also a strong call to action where you let people know how to connect with me. See, I did it. Okay, I did it. Hot seat, even though you put the fire on me. You put the fire on me.
And you said, and the one thing I love is, don't be the one that they get up and go to the bathroom on. There's no way in the world they could have gotten up and gone to the bathroom on this episode of the Momentum Shift. Wow. Christie Taylor, I want to thank you for joining me today. You are truly a momentum shift, and I love the jewels you dropped today. Thank you. Keep being you. Keep doing what you do. Keep climbing those mountains because you ain't done yet. With that, thank you, everybody, for joining me on the Momentum Shift with Christie Taylor, consulting.com. Go check her out. And until then, we'll see you next week. Always keep climbing and just keep pushing. I'm Eric Collier, the Mayor of Motivation, and your host for the Momentum Shift podcast and radio show. Take care.
Thank you for joining The Momentum Shift, a show bringing you interviews and stories of incredible people to help you get inspired, get moving, and get results to ultimately create the life-changing momentum shift that will improve your life. Join host Eric Collier, the Mayor of Motivation and Mental Quicksand Expert, every Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern for The Momentum Shift, the show and change you've been looking for.